Hello, everyone. Dr. Christine Smith here. I have a really cool guest for you today, Isabelle Ready, who I have known for, I guess close to 3 decades at this point. Yep. And
Yep.
I wanted to bring her on because she has a phenomenal story, and she's now becoming a meditation and life coach after going through a transformative experience in her own life using meditation. And I'll just let her introduce herself a little bit because she spent a lot of time in public service and the military. So, hi, Izzy. Would you be open to telling us a little bit more about yourself and kind of your history and where you were and how you got to where you are now and just what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Um, so, oh no, I'm sorry, my dogs. Um, so I started off, I'm just gonna start like when I was 18, joined the army, joined as military police, did all that, deployed. It was great. Um, and then I got out after 7.5 years and I became a sheriff's deputy. Did that for a few years, got pregnant, had my son. Um, and then, when the pandemic started, I did get the big C. Um, got really, really sick the first time. And then my health really started spiraling downhill from there. Um, and then doctors didn't know what was going on and then got it again. And then I got really, really worse. Was pretty much stuck to a couch, and just couldn't function, was wasting away. And then came back to you and you're like, hey, have you tried some meditation? And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I'm dying. What? But I'm dying. um, and so believe it or not, the meditation was the most powerful thing and the most transformative thing for my recovery. And that has just been so powerful that I completely changed my career path. I'm no longer going in the law enforcement route. I'm actually in the process of becoming a meditation teacher and eventual life coach, because this whole transformation anyone can do it, and it's just we need more people willing to teach it.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. So I know, it's a pretty big transition to move from something like that into something like this. And this is the reason that I wanted to bring you on, is I think a lot of people, especially people in the armed forces or public service, sometimes there's like a stigma around meditation,
Mhm.
which it seems like this woo-woo thing, or it might come from a place of, you know, needing support and needing some calmness and needing some nourishment in your life, is a sign of weakness. But honestly, I think it's a sign of strength, is being willing to take time to nourish yourself. And I don't know, do you agree with that statement based on kind of the culture that you came from?
Absolutely. So I think, so one, just from my childhood, there was a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of learned unhealthy coping mechanisms. And one of those was I taught myself not to feel, which essentially, for me, just became bottling everything up. On the exterior, I wouldn't be showing any emotion, which is what, you know, as a woman in the army, you're not allowed to show emotion. If you do, then you're just emotional, and then your ability. And so I was phenomenal at bottling in everything, not allowing any emotion to show, which actually, in my situation, I believe, was one of the reasons I got as sick as I did. And just that long history of trauma, unhealed trauma, unaddressed, everything. And then joining the military, joining law enforcement, you know, that's another community where emotion is not, oh, it's not okay, you know, because it shows that you are a liability, you are a weakness. When in reality, you know, after going through all of the healing process, being vulnerable is good. It's how we process emotions. We are feeling creatures. And if we don't feel what we're feeling, and if we don't process it, then our body just stores it in a negative way. And then eventually your body will manifest that negative emotion that's just sitting there in a physical way, you know?
I'm so glad that you brought that up. So let's talk biochemistry for a minute when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I think she stated it so well. And, you know, and there's reasons for that kind of culture. So it's not to say that there's not reasons behind it. It's like if you're in a life or death situation, you have to be able to put your own stuff aside to save yourself and save other people. So that's understandable. But if that bleeds into the rest of your life, or that is your life all the time, you start to shift the biochemistry in your body. And let's just take an example, right? So if you are thinking about a situation and you feel fear about that situation and your heart rate increases, let's say you're not even in the situation. Let's say it's in the past, it's done, but you think about that memory and you kind of feel your heart rate increase and you feel your mind get distracted and you get sucked back into that moment. You're actually having a physiological reaction to something that's not happening. And that's the essence of emotions. Emotions are biochemical shifts in our body that are reflective of what is happening in our internal state. And so you can, on the outside, you know, not present that stuff, but on the inside, you can be feeling it. And when we start to have these biochemical shifts and we have them repetitively over time, it starts to affect the entire systemic process of our body. And when we don't really allow ourselves a chance to feel an emotion, which is how we process it, sometimes you just have to sit there and feel it and process it and then move on versus just like skipping right over it. It's still kind of there in your subconscious mind, which is, you know, 95% of your mind. And when it lives in your subconscious mind like that as chemistry, it can end up affecting the tissues in your body. And this is why body work can be like so powerful in this kind of stuff, or why meditation is so powerful in this stuff. Meditation is essentially its own form of body work. It's like self-induced body work. You're just inducing biochemical shifts in yourself, versus if you have someone work on you and do body work, they're kind of inducing a biochemical shift. And when we do this, it allows our tissues a chance to release these stored bits of energy, these stored bits of chemistry, that kind of thing. And then it allows our body to process it and detox it. Versus if we hold on to everything, then we can be dealing with some pretty significant toxicity, and that can be an issue. So just something to keep in mind. And I know you experienced some of your own biochemical shifts and also, you know, kind of dealing with the hangover that is shifting your own biochemistry. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started meditating, after you told me, you're like, hey, is supplements are only going to take you 10% of the way. 90%, it's all your brain. It's all how you talk to yourself. And
just to give you guys like a preface, like we've known each other since we were little kids. So like I want to acknowledge like what a shift it can take in thinking to shift over to this lifestyle, but why it can make such a big difference, which is what she's going to go into.
Mm-hmm. So my first thing with meditation was actually pretty nice. And so, because I went into it completely open-minded, and gave it a shot, and just basically, I mean, I'm sure you remember when I was so sick, I just told you, like, all my meditation is just laying in bed saying, I am getting better. I am getting better, over and over again until I fell asleep. And you're like, well, that's a form of meditation. I was like, oh, cool. Well, I guess I'm doing it. And then, like with the guiding saying, you know, uh, you kind of gave me the guidance of, okay, well, now you can start to guide your body into healing. Uh, so for me, what my super awesome control freak person did, I changed the meditation from something that was supposed to be calming, soothing, and healing into something that I was a pure dictator to my body. I completely changed what meditation was, and it was not meditation. I went into every meditation after my first like couple good experiences saying, cool, we're going to do that every single time. Body, you will listen, you will heal, you are healing, whether you like it or not. And I actually started to get anxious about meditating every day. My body would hurt. I would have an instant headache even thinking about meditation. And it was all because I went into the meditation with an expectation of, okay, body, you're going to heal. And I just completely hijacked what the meditation experience was. So in the beginning, it was actually pretty rough for me. And I had to realize that I need to relinquish that control in order to let the meditation process actually do its thing. And so once I kind of let go of the control, then I started to actually feel good again. And that's where, there's various types of meditation. And that's where it just really, really brought me out of being sick. Because one of the things with our brains is that our brain can't really tell the difference between reality and memory. Okay. Or sometimes experiences. Okay.
That goes back to that thing I was talking about a second ago, where it's like you think about a past experience and then all of a sudden you have a biochemical shift.
Exactly. You start to relive it again.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same thing with the meditation. When I was so sick, my biggest meditation was visualizing me being active, being able to hold my son again, like just being a part of life. Because at that point in my life, I couldn't even get out of bed. And so visualizing that and experiencing that in the meditation really just, man, it made me feel amazing. And that I could feel the shift in my thinking that, I was no longer sick of dying, and I had gotten to experience a bit of life again just by meditating. And that really changed my mood, changed the shift, like just shifted everything about how I felt about being sick. And that was the mind change that I needed to get out of thinking I'm dying.
Well, and I think, you brought up a point that I think is really good, where it's like I got to experience some of my life again, and that is what helped me turn the corner. And I think we often underestimate and don't talk enough about the crazy amount of grief that comes with being ill, or being a super active person that does 8 million things, and then all of a sudden you like can't even walk your dog, and it's just like a complete shift. And the reason that I know as much about this as I do is because I went through my own health crisis, and I had to use meditation to get out of it too. And this is why I was actually working with my own situation at the same time that Izzy was going through hers. And so I was just a couple steps ahead in the journey, and I was just sharing everything that had been so meaningful to me. And this is why I'm so passionate about sharing it with you guys and sharing it with clients, is because I think a lot of people are told what to do and they don't really understand how. And the one thing I will say where I have to give Izzy credit is she actually did it. And she did it when she felt like crap. And I did it when I felt like crap. And, the first like 2 weeks of doing regular meditation, I was barely able to sit up the entire time. And I will say meditations tend to be more effective when you're upright, because if you're laying down, your brain just tends to not be as focused. Can depend on the kind of meditation you're doing. But for myself, I have found that. I also started to learn how to incorporate breath work with it. But at first, like I could barely sit there the whole time. I didn't even have the core strength. And then I was so exhausted at the end of it that I would literally like fall asleep face down on the floor for a little bit. And that was how I started. And it was, very difficult to start. And the reason that I was doing this is like I had a similar but different situation where, in both of our situations, like our immune systems were completely overactive. And for myself, I had become allergic to pretty much all foods and supplements. And so I could not use them to help my health, ironically. And therefore, meditation was my only option. So I ended up meditating and really reconstructing my perception of myself and of the world. And I had just had so many things happen that I got to this point where my body was in a very defensive state. And ultimately, my body thought that it was under attack. So I had to go deep into meditation and have these conversations with my body of, you're okay, you're not under attack, we're safe. You don't need to worry about that thing. Like, thank you for protecting me, but you can calm down. And I'm so grateful that I am not sensitive and allergic to these things anymore. And I'm so grateful that my body is working correctly. And I feel such relief, and it feels so good to be participating in my life again. And exactly like Izzy was talking about, not only visualizing what you're doing, but feeling the emotion behind it. Because we've already talked about how emotion is what causes the chemical shift. So if your body is stuck in like a fight or flight state and it is not healing well because it's stuck in inflammation and it's stuck in a state of worry and anxiety and fear and depression and grief, it's a really hard place to heal from. So as we start to work on this stuff, essentially, that's what meditation is. It's a time that you set aside for your body to feel safe. I think that's like the simplest way that I can say it. And when your body feels safe, then you can enter into a mode where you're creative and passionate and healing and building instead of breaking down. So, I'd love your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, you already nailed it, because our body has the autonomic nervous system. All right. And you've already talked about it before in the past. You've got your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. And your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic is your rest and digest. Right. So when we are constantly stressed out, we're creating all the stress hormones. Our body is like, all right, we are fighting a dinosaur today. Like, let's do this. So our bodies, it's using all of the energy, all of the hormones to just getting ready for this big fight, right? And so, unfortunately, we get stuck in this fight or flight mode. We think up of some memory that was really traumatic for us, and boom, if we haven't handled it or processed it, boom, we're adding hormones. Or if we're sitting in our chairs and we have those horrible, awful daydreams, we all do it. We're lying if we say we don't. And we're just a family just died in a car crash. How would my life be? Oh my gosh. Like, that's horrible. Has it actually happened? No. But there is a response in your body to your daydream, to something that's not even real. Your body is responding to your thoughts, right? And there's so many things that are keeping us in fight or flight mode, right? And so the meditation is, and so when it comes to fight and flight and rest and digest, it's a sliding scale. Okay. It's not, okay, I meditated, I'm now way over here. No. It takes work to finally get your brain online or back off
Physical
from.
therapy for your brain.
Exactly. So it does take some time to get your brain out of like this state of trying to survive into a thriving state. And so that's where the meditation allows your body to feel safe, allows all of the hormones to settle down, and allow your body to heal, which was one thing that I hadn't realized in my case, was that I had just held on to so many things. And it was just horrible. My body was just giving up, and I was having all of the symptoms, stroke symptoms, couldn't walk. My heart was out of control, and it was ruining my life. And then you gotta take that hard look in the mirror and be like, I am done feeling like this. What do I need to do? And for me, it was the meditation and processing everything from childhood. Like, there would be times I'd be meditating and I would just be sobbing. And my husband would come in. He's like, are you sure this is okay for you? I was like, go away. It's part of the process. I'm healing. And it's like the things that I would cry about in those meditations, I can look back at now and I can be like, okay, this is why it hurt me. This is why I held on to it. And this is what I've taken away from it. I was powerless, but now I have the power back. So meditation is, wow, it's takes you from fighting dinosaurs all the way over here to being like just feeling great. And
And
it's amazing.
I will say, when you're processing stuff like that, it's a little bit different for everybody. So sometimes you might need some extra support with a counselor, and that's completely fine. But the cool part about meditation is that, in our traditional system of counseling, it's a lot of using words and talking about things. And words can be clunky, and they can be distracting from a feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
meditation really allows you to actually go into your body and work with the energy of something rather
Mm-hmm.
than only the story of it. And I think that is why it can be so powerful, is because we can get wrapped up in a story and forget to actually feel the emotion. It's very easy to tell a story and be emotionless, but it's pretty impossible to go inwards and feel and not experience the emotion. And I think that's what she's talking about, right? Is she had a time where she actually allowed herself to go in and feel things that she'd just been pushing down. And like, I went through the same experience. And that's not to say like every time you start meditating, you're going to go like process your deepest, darkest stuff. That's, an option that you can explore with different techniques and modalities. But ultimately, it's giving yourself a chance to work with your own energy. And I'd say the most powerful part of it is, an acknowledgement of whatever emotion is coming up for you, but then the practice of replacing it with what you'd like it to be instead. And that is the most important part. And I think sometimes gets skipped, is that is the piece she was talking about of, I got to experience my life again. And so if you're in a state where, maybe you're immobilized because you're ill or injured or something like that, or you have gotten to that place where your brain has become trained to kind of go into catastrophizing. And it's like every single time something bad happens, you're sent down this cascade of thinking about every single wrong decision you've ever made. That's an inflamed brain. Like, that's not really a normal way, or I want to use the word normal. It's not really an adaptive way of thinking. And so it's usually when your brain is struggling with maladaptive patterns. And if we can work with these patterns, and when you start to feel these emotions like gratitude and relief, and like, oh, like I'm so glad I can feel joy again. And even if you are like, I haven't felt joy in 20 years, I don't know how to do that. You start to imagine people that are joyful, and you think about what it would feel like to be in their shoes, and you think about what they're experiencing when they experience that. And then you get the flavor of it, and then you kind of let go of that image of them, and you just hold on to the flavor of what that feels like. And you marinate in that for a little while. And when you do that, it raises the frequency and vibration of your body and your cells into a state where they are more effective at healing. And so when we talk about, okay, so we talked about like the benefits, right? Let's talk about the how, because I think a lot of people skip that. So when we're working on changing brainwave states, and Dr. Joe Dispenza is kind of heading a lot of the research on this and has like 20,000 plus brain scans from, or just has thousands of brain scans from like 20 plus countries. And like universities are getting really interested in his research because he's showing how people are changing their brains. And the idea behind it is that when we meditate, there's a lot of different kinds. Like you can just sit in meditation and focus on your breath. That's the really foundational type that kind of teaches you how to quiet your mind and come back to yourself. And this is where we start to retrain your brain waves to come out of like beta and high beta, which is where you're kind of, like that's what you take an exam in, or like when you're stressed about something, and then coming down to alpha, which is kind of meditative, or like between wake and sleep state. And this is where we're really creative, or like when you're in flow state or doing art, that kind of thing, whatever art is to you. But when we start to change those brainwave states, then we can actually kind of go into our body and start to give it instructions, like she was talking about. And our body is incredible. And I think we only barely understand the potential of it. And when you start to instruct it very specifically, it can do some really profound things. Sometimes it just needs your intention, and it needs your attention and your energy. And there's this old saying that I really like, which is where intention goes, energy flows and blood follows. So if you're trying to heal something and you want blood to go to that area, pay attention to it and like focus on it. Even if it's an internal organ or something like that, like you can bring your attention to that. Or, if it's like your mind you're trying to heal, just bringing your attention to your mind with love and patience and just awareness. And sitting in silence like this is usually what stresses a lot of people out. But that goes back to exactly what she was talking about, where it can be really difficult in the beginning, because ultimately your body maintains what's called homeostasis, which is a state of balance that it's used to. You can create a homeostasis that's maladapted. So you can have a homeostasis of depression or anxiety or whatever. It's just your body's like, oh, this is where we're at all the time. This is what I'm going to maintain the cellular chemistry levels at. That's about like as complicated as your cells think. So then if you start to meditate and your chemistry shifts and like your cortisol goes down, your cells are like, wait, this was not the cortisol level we agreed on. I am going to do that thing and send a signal to the brain to get the cortisol level back up. Well, what happens in your brain is you think about everything stressful, like the car accident she was talking about earlier. And then you kind of go down this cascade, your cortisol levels come up and your body's like, okay, good, we're back at where we're supposed to be. But this is why consistency and persistence matters, because it's basically biochemical physical therapy for your brain and your body. And when we introduce a state over and over and over again where chemicals are lower, then your body goes, oh, okay, so you want it at this level? All right, well, then I won't send that signal to the brain. And then all of a sudden, after a little while, you start to break these thought patterns, because thoughts are just brain chemistry and energy. And if you can work with both of those things, then it can really start to shift, and you can start to work with your subconscious mind. And when we start to work with the subconscious mind, then we work with our own physiology. So it's kind of this beautiful interwoven web. And then you can go, a lot deeper with these things, where if you're trying to manifest something in your life, which, I mean, we're basically talking about manifesting health. But let's say you want to like manifest a situation, you would practice being the person that had that situation already happen. So if you were trying to get a promotion at work, you might be like, how would I act once I was promoted to that position? Well, I'd probably show up a little bit early. I would feel really confident in the ways I was talking to people. I might take a little bit more leadership in my role. I probably, work on that project to get it done on time because I'm prideful about my new position. And then all of a sudden you start acting like that. And then all of a sudden it starts shifting your performance at work. And then all of a sudden you get a promotion. So it's interesting how these things happen. And some of it's energy, some of it's just shifting how you're behaving, brings new things into your life. It's kind of a blend of all of it. But yeah, it can be really powerful. So I'd love to hear your 2 cents on that concept.
It is. And so basically, one of the things with meditation is mindfulness and meditation. They kind of go hand in hand, and so eventually, once you've really gotten into the meditation, you start becoming mindful when you are not meditating. And so you start to become aware of how you're thinking, how you're feeling, and you can choose to respond or react to certain characteristics of situations. You
Versus
know,
being on autopilot.
exactly. And so reacting is typically, you touch the burner, your reaction is pulling your hand away, right? And so one of the things with mindfulness and meditation is eventually you'll stop reacting to things because you have become aware of how you're thinking and feeling, and then you get to choose how you respond to situations. And so, like, let's say my son, once again, does not want to eat anything other than mac and cheese and chicken nuggets, right? You used to make me so mad because I'm like, you need variety. But now it's like, okay, you're hungry, you're eating, here's an option. And and I choose not to get angry about it because I'm like, at the end of the day, he's happy, he's healthy, he's fed, you know and so with the meditation, you do become more mindful and aware of your also conscious thoughts. And so what your practice, when you're going internal and you're going straight into the brain, you're by yourself solo and you're in deep, you know once you've practiced enough, it really does start to affect your conscious world around you. And so it's totally possible to manifest what you're meditating on in your conscious world. Case in point, I was meditating on being active, running, weightlifting, walking my dogs, and here it is. I'm going to say 11 months later, I'm doing it. And so just with a couple supplements to help me on my way, and the meditation was really, I brought that out.
I just want to tell you guys this, so just so you understand how profound this is. So and again, someone I've known a long time, when I spoke to her on the phone, when she was still not feeling well, she was slurring. And I was like, this is not my friend. And she just, it didn't, I know her and I know how much life and vitalism she has. And it just didn't sound like her. And then when she told me like she couldn't take her dogs for a walk without her heart beating too fast, like that's a pretty intense thing and a really big shift for someone who has done everything that she's done. And her physical effects started to improve before she was ever working with supplements, just from the meditation alone. So just know that, meditation is really tapping into your own body's pharmacy. Like, we naturally have a whole bunch of chemistry in our body and we're capable of making it. And that's not to say that, working with a practitioner isn't important. It's really important to work with a practitioner, especially if you're struggling like that. If anything, just to have some support, because when your brain is in an inflamed state, it can be much more difficult to logically think through things and make decisions that are beneficial for you because your brain just isn't operating in a normal way. But just know that she was already having shifts just from the meditation. So just wanted to toss that in there.
Well, and then also to double tap Joe Dispenza, his famous line, I love it, is how we think is how we feel, and how we feel is how we think. And it's very true, because before, me and you started talking again about my case, my mind was saying, I am deathly sick. I'm dying. I keep having strokes. They weren't strokes, but I was feeling like I was having strokes. In the hospital, every time they're like, yeah, you're presenting as a stroke patient. And they do all the tests, like, sorry, you do not have a stroke. Like, we don't know what's going on, but this is where we're at. And so my mindset was, I am sick and I'm dying. I was dropping weight. I was losing about 5 pounds a week for about 5-6 weeks, and it just wasn't stopping. It was a cascade. And then the meditation, when he's like, okay, how you think is how you feel, and how you feel is how you think. Well, I wanted to feel healthy, happy, and alive. And so when I started meditating on that, and, even if it was like 20 minutes in there, and thinking that came over into my conscious sick life, I'll call it. And eventually, I could walk, I could get out of bed and my heart wasn't going crazy, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting better. And it was a slow progression, and it's been a slow progression. It's been, from the first time I got sick, I'd say we're now looking at 2 years. And so, but I'm back, and just from meditation alone, it's truly been life changing. And I would not be here if it hadn't been for this. And it's changed my relationship with myself. It's changed my relationship with my son and my husband and every person that I have a connection with. And to feel, the love that I have for people in the world, it's awesome, because I can meditate and I can send love out to the whole world. It's amazing. It's a great feeling. And then what it does to your biochemistry is, it just keeps producing the same awesome chemicals that make you feel good, that make you happy, that make you healthy. And that's not to say that there's still not bad things in life, that you're like, wow, that does create stress. But the awesome thing with meditation and mindfulness is that eventually you can respond to those stressors, and your body does not get stressed and psyched out and goes back into fighting dinosaurs. And it's like, okay, it's a little blip. And, and it takes practice. It does take practice, because I will say the first time that one of my dogs truly upset me, he attacked the friendliest turkey in the world and ripped out his tail feathers. I was broke. Okay. I was emotionally very distraught. And I told my husband, I was like, listen, it was early in the morning. So I was like, my day is going to be ruined if I don't meditate on this. Like, give me a minute. And like, there's so many meditations out there. There's so many apps out there. It's like I Googled like SOS, how do I deal with like stressful emotions, like help. And you can find one, you can find them. And it's like an autonomic reset. It's all breathing based, and poof, you do it for about 15 minutes and I felt better, so the meditation, it is a daily practice. It is a minute by minute practice of every minute of your life. And it helps. It's so amazing. It's like the things that used to be your triggers, they don't trigger you anymore. It's a process of learning about yourself and loving yourself. And that has been so phenomenal and transformational for myself, that is why I've changed my career path to become a meditation teacher, to become the life coach, because, people need this. We're in times today where, people come home and they want to relax on their phone, but little do we realize our brains aren't relaxing on our phone. And then once we've given ourselves 20, 30 minutes on our phone, we get off and we're still irritated. We're not relaxed. We're still exhausted. There are steps that we can do to actually truly give our brains, our bodies, and our hearts a break. And, meditation is just one of those steps, and it's really, really beautiful. And I'm excited to share it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, for like the phone thing that she just mentioned, I'm glad she brought that up. So just for like a little biochemistry lesson, right? The reason that we crave our phones is because of the dopamine hit, like every single time that you swipe and you see something new. And our society has basically gotten designed these days to orient around dopamine, and that's marketing and things like that. And dopamine is your happy chemical and your motivation chemical. It's also kind of an addictive one. And so when you're doing it with your phone, you're getting dopamine plus blue light, which is cortisol, plus whatever you're looking at, which can induce more cortisol sometimes, depending on how you perceive it. And that's a really different response than when you're in meditation, where you're getting like dopamine and serotonin and your cortisol is going down. And they've actually shown in studies that you increase your dopamine by like 50%, 50, in one session of meditation. So that is why you get a similar effect that's actually sustainable, is because it's just like this slight shift in biochemistry, but still working with the same pathways. So I love teaching people the physiology behind it, because if you understand what's going on, it can be a lot easier to motivate yourself. But anyway, I know that you have plenty on your plate, so thank you for taking the time to do this with me, and just to teach people these are options and this is out there, and there are people like this that you can work with. And I think both Izzy and I have a passion for just helping people kind of rediscover their own resiliency and getting tools that you can use at home in your own life, especially after you've kind of been through the system and hit a bunch of dead ends and don't know what else to do. So anyway, just thanks for taking the time to do this. Any last thoughts for people?
Absolutely. So I will say, for anyone who is a beginner on meditation, there's going to be two things that you're going to notice immediately. Okay. The first thing is going to be that it's going to be hard for your brain to actually focus on meditating. The little pops of ideas and thoughts are going to keep popping in. That is normal, completely normal. Let them go and then come back to your thought, back to your meditation. Okay. And be patient with yourself, be loving with yourself. Don't get frustrated that a thought pops in, totally normal. Okay. And then the second one, Christine and I kind of already touched on it, but basically when you first start meditating, okay, your body is going to release a whole bunch of stress. Totally normal. You're going to be exhausted. That's okay. Whatever that means, your meditation is working. Your body is releasing all this stress. And so with those two things, it can be kind of frustrating. It can be kind of scary. So one thing, definitely make sure that you have a support network, especially if you are having a lot of emotions come out during your sessions. Okay. There's no shame in needing help for those. Okay. And then the thoughts, again, just keep coming back to your meditation, keep coming back to your practice. It takes time to train your brain to go into a meditative state. Okay. And like what Christine mentioned, your brain is like, whoa, you're doing something new. Here's some thoughts. We need to sabotage because this is not okay. You are stronger than your brain. Just keep telling it, nope, we're not doing that right now. We are meditating. Okay. So those are kind of the two biggest things that any first time meditators are going to experience. Don't give up on it. And I promise it is amazing.
Absolutely. And I'll say like two last thoughts with that in mind. So when we talked about the biochemical pathways earlier and everything that she was just mentioning of like kind of having to fight your way through it, your body can get addicted to whatever's familiar. So if being depressed has been familiar for you, you can actually kind of be addicted to being depressed because there's something oddly safe about it. And so sometimes you're like fighting through that, and just know that, practicing how you want to be instead is one of the best things that you can do, because you remind yourself of what you're working towards and what's available and what's there. And the other thought I have for you of like one of my own techniques for when the thoughts are popping up, because they will. And that is what meditation is it's learning how to not be controlled by your thoughts, and how to instead take the driver's seat and know that not every single thought is true. And you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to be dragged around by it. You can just kind of let them flow. And for myself, if I have a bunch of thoughts popping up, I like to acknowledge that thought. And it's the tone, like the attitude that you do it with, which I think is really important that she was talking about. Instead of being like, oh, I have a thought, come back. It's like, oh, thought. All right, come back. Totally different tone, totally different energy. And when that thought comes up, I like to basically watch it dissolve into little dust and energy particles. And so they kind of lose the story and they lose the charge, but they're just the fundamental components of that thought, which is your own energy, which is why when you're distracted with a bunch of thoughts, your energy is not really available for healing. And so I like to take those energy particles and inhale them back into my body and tell my body that I'd like it to repurpose that energy for healing. And it can be as simple as that. That can be your entire meditation if you're just starting out. It's just noticing your thought, watching it dissolve into energy, pulling that energy back into yourself, and asking to repurpose it. So just a quick tip, because I like giving you guys tactics that you can use. So anyway, thank you so much, Izzy. I really appreciate your time and your thoughts and sharing your experience. And I'll look forward to the next talk that we get to do for people.
Absolutely. For having me.
Yeah.